Well, as there were more riots, looting, and mayhem over the weekend because of what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a unarmed black man shot by a cop, a white cop, and this is now turning into another BLM frenzy. People are very, outraged, and they're destroying businesses as a result, as if that somehow makes anything better. Let's actually talk to somebody who understands what it means to be a cop, dealing with situations where you have to make these choices, life and death decisions, your own safety, the safety of those around you at risk. John Cardillo is with us now. He's formerly of the NYPD. Now he is a TV host and a political commentator. Follow him on Twitter at John Cardillo. Hey, John, great to have you back.
Always good to see you, Buck.
All right, so what did you see? I mean, just take me tactically through this, where in the scene, I'm sure you've watched the video multiple times, as I have, and many listening will have. Jacob Blake, he's the individual who was shot here by cops. He's allegedly trying to get to break up a domestic dispute between two females. This is not yet confirmed, but he's going around his vehicle. Cops are talking to him. What are you seeing, and how do you describe what's happening here as an after-action report?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Buck. It's really the question, capital THE. So what I'm seeing as former law enforcement is a little bit different than what the Twitter masses are seeing. We know that police were called to a domestic violence situation, like you note accurately. The narrative is, well, he was breaking up a fight between two women. We don't know that to be true. But we do know that the two most dangerous incidents for patrol officers are car stops, those routine car stops, and domestic violence incidents. That's where the majority of police officers are hurt, killed, etc. They respond. Now, standard operating procedure would be to get the names of everyone involved, possibly run on your vehicle computer the license plates of everyone there. Had they done that in this case, I don't know if they did. I would be shocked if they didn't, because it's always standard operating procedure to know who you're dealing with. They would have found that Jacob Blake had an outstanding warrant for 3 different charges, all with domestic violence enhancement. One was criminal trespass, domestic enhancement. The second, the most egregious, felony sexual abuse with a domestic enhancement. And the third, a little less, disorderly conduct with that enhancement. Now the police have no discretion, Buck. Zero discretion. A warrant, especially an outstanding felony warrant, is an order from a judge saying, arrest this person on site, police officers. You have zero discretion. I'm the judge. I've issued the warrant. That is an order to you, law enforcement, to bring this person in the second you encounter them. So now the guy presumably knows that he's going to go through the system. He starts trying to evade the police, by walking around his vehicle. This is where, to me, it becomes an entirely justifiable police use of force. And there's another false narrative out there that Jacob Blake is dead. He's not. He's in stable condition in the hospital, awaiting what I presume to be arraignment. Now, what I see at that point are the police are putting their hands on him, not being heavy-handed. He lunges into the vehicle. In the police academy, you were with NYPD, you were an intel analyst, but you work with cops all day. There are key phrases they teach in the academy. Lungeable, grabbable area. Any reasonable police officer with a modicum of experience would be able to articulate that when Jacob Blake lunged into that vehicle, when he extended his arm, a weapon, doesn't matter if it's a gun, a knife, a baseball bat, was well within that lungeable, grabbable area. You combine that with the police officer's training and experience, with what they might have known about Blake, an open violent felony warrant, and his non-compliance at every single step of the way during their interaction with him, which culminates in him evading them, resisting them, lunging into that vehicle, extending his arm. I see an entirely justifiable police use of force. And I'll go one step further. At any step during that encounter, Jacob Blake could have simply complied with police, and this would have ended peacefully. So I don't see charges for the cops. And if charges are brought, I see the police being exonerated, because they did exactly what cops around the world are trained to do every day for decades upon decades.
Now, John, let me throw at you some of the narrative out there, because you actually have expertise in this. I mean, one of the only things, I mean, the media knows nothing about guns, but the only thing that's close to that is actual law enforcement procedure. So it's important to get into the specifics, right? The details. The same reporters that write.
Yeah. Twitter and Facebook.
I was going to say the same reporters that are writing about chainsaw bazookas or whatever are the reporters that are saying, why didn't they just use the special, police ninja move that just peaceably disarms everybody and like no one ever gets hurt, right? So that what they're going to say is, why 7 shots, John?
Because you're trained from day one in the academy to shoot until the threat is stopped. It doesn't matter if it's 1 round. It doesn't matter if it's 16 rounds and you reload your service weapon. You keep firing until you're sure the threat is stopped. Because, Buck, here's the very important, the critical nuance. The second you make the determination as a police officer or as a private legally armed citizen to escalate to deadly force, to fire that weapon, you are now saying to the world at large, to the legal system, to yourself, your conscience, God, I believe that my life or the lives of surrounding innocents is in mortal danger, or the personal safety of the same are in mortal danger. I'm going to fire until the threat is stopped. That's why 7 rounds. It's an arbitrary number. It doesn't matter if it was 1 or if it was 17. It's done until the threat is stopped. You fire until you feel everything is safe.
Now, John, we're speaking to John Cardillo, formerly of the NYPD. He's now a political and TV commentator. So, John, then there's the issue of the force escalation here. I read that they had already tried to use a taser, which I'm assuming this wasn't. I didn't see this on the video. I could have maybe missed some part of it. I mean, there's a lot of information still coming in. But the reports are they already tried to use a taser. And I feel like there's a little bit of a sense out there among the general public, certainly fanned by the media, that if you use a taser, well, then everything should be okay. But we keep seeing that it's a tool, but it's clearly an imperfect tool.
Sure. Look, tasers, pepper spray, batons, these things are all arbitrary when it comes to a certain suspect. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Look, personal experience. We had a guy, big guy in great shape in the Bronx. We tased him. He pulled the barbs out and laughed in our face. From 3 feet away, Buck, I hit this guy dead in the eyes, emptied an entire can of pepper spray. You know what he did? He wiped his eyes off, licked his fingers, said, and started fighting with us. He actually ate the pepper spray. Some of these guys are bad guys. They're tough guys. The non-lethal devices don't work on them. So again, I didn't see a taser used in the video. I'll reserve comment on that. But had a non-lethal not worked, I wouldn't be shocked. I've seen it on the street time and again. Non-lethal. Everybody thinks they're panaceas, they're magic bullets, tasers, rubber bullets, pepper spray. They're not in the real world. In fact, they often fail to incapacitate suspects as often as they do work to incapacitate them.
John, also on the issue of chokeholds, carotid holds. I feel like everyone now has discovered this term of a carotid hold, which is, but this is, this is what they're talking about. This is what they're saying. What is true about this? I mean, take me back into, NYPD Academy and also your time on the street. It seems to me like, I was talking about this. I've been thinking about this for a while. Like the expectation is that law enforcement now are all highly trained MMA fighters with jiu-jitsu backgrounds who are going to be stronger, faster, fitter, and able to deal with people who have lethal intent often toward them or serious injury intent toward them and not have to respond in ways that leave marks or could really hurt somebody. What do we need to know about the Democrat proposal for a chokehold ban?
How much time do we have? But I mean, look, the most violent collision I've ever experienced is the collision of what the public thinks the police ought to be and what civil service laws demand the police become, right? There was a girl in my academy class who was so obese, so horribly out of shape, that she was held back in the academy for 4 years. She was paid as a New York City police officer because she was a woman, considered a minority in New York City, white woman. She couldn't be fired once she was hired, but the taxpayers of the city of New York paid for her to sit in the academy because she wouldn't stop eating Twinkies and couldn't run around the gym for 4 years. Eventually, she got on the street. She was so dangerous on the street that they sat her inside a station house, and for 20 years, she answered phones with a gun and a shield as a New York City police officer. To me, that's just horrible, right? She put lives at risk. But that's the intersection of what ought to be and civil service laws. Then, even if a cop is in the best shape possible, I don't care if they were a Navy SEAL, if they were a Tier 1 special operator, deployed 7 times prior to law enforcement, unless they're training on their own with their firearms, with their physical fitness, their fighting skills, departments don't have the money, bandwidth, or resources to put police officers through that kind of training. These are unrealistic expectations. So chokeholds, they work. A lot of departments around the country still allow cops to use them. They work very, very well on very aggressive suspects, but they're the media's bad word, the new 4-letter word du jour, chokehold, right? Doesn't matter if they're effective, doesn't matter if they do save lives, doesn't matter if 1 or 2 anecdotal incidents showed them going the wrong way, and then it turned out the person had 97% clogged arteries or was hopped up on meth and fentanyl. The facts don't matter. It's just the bad word du jour, so let's eliminate them. And I think it'll have disastrous effects on actual policing and police use of force and police morale.
You think, John, if we see continued madness on the streets, not just in Wisconsin, but in other cities, perhaps even here in NYC, do you think that this will blow back on Democrats, or is the media just able to cover for them still?
Oh, I think it's already happening. I really do. I was at my beach club the other night. I met a couple. They were new members. They had just moved down from New York, and we were having a good conversation. And they said, we don't want to talk about politics, but I have some tattoos that make it pretty obvious what my political leanings are. And they said, we've been, and they went like, the quotes, and they said, we've been Upper West Side Jewish liberals our whole lives, and we will never vote Democrat again. And when I walked them out to their car, we left together, they had a Trump bumper sticker on the car. I mean, I'm seeing the blowback. I live in very blue Broward County, and very quietly, people are saying, hey, look, we're not Trump fans. We don't like conservatives, but hey, we're not voting for this. This isn't John Kennedy's Democratic Party. This is not what we signed up for, so we're either going to sit it out or vote Trump. I tweeted today, I think Black Lives Matter is one of the Trump campaign's best assets at this point.
John Cardillo, formerly of the NYPD, now a commentator out there. Follow him on social media. John, always great to have your expertise, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Always good to see you, Buck. Thanks, man.
Got to tell you, of all the really, truly stupid controversies out there, and this is a tough one because there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them to choose from, so this is a pretty competitive area. But of all the really dumb conspiracy theories that I've heard recently, or I shouldn't say conspiracies, kerfuffles, the Melania Trump has destroyed the White House rose garden. It's the dumbest thing I have ever. And big journalists are freaking out about it. I mean, the journalists that are, I went to Columbia Journalism School and I'm really all about the facts and I speak truth to power. Journalism, and apparently Brian Stelter. I do the same impression for the run-of-the-mill journalist and for Brian Stelter these days. But it's really I'm just very upset about it. I'm a journalist, and it really makes me upset. Newsweek right here. Melania Trump faces backlash for Rose Garden renovation. Let's see what the subheading here is great too. She cut down Jackie's trees. Oh my gosh. Melania Trump, ex-New York Times reporter, apologizes for xenophobic attack on First Lady. That's right. There was a guy who has a pretty big following on Twitter, and he referred to Melania Trump's revamped Rose Garden as a fascist parade ground. I mean, if you looked at it, it's there is absolutely these people are so nuts. Oh my gosh. Former New York Times reporter, according to The Independent, apologized after launching a xenophobic attack on Melania Trump after the First Lady unveiled the newly designed Rose Garden at the White House. In tweets that have since been deleted, Kurt Eichenwald branded the president's wife, who obtained U.S. citizenship. He referred to her as a foreigner. Wow. Who has no right to wreck our history. See, this is perfect, though, friends. Melania Trump has been a U.S. citizen for 14 years. So when elite Democrats pretend that they're like, oh, we're a nation of immigrants, they only like immigrants as a general thing, as a general idea, insofar as they vote for Democrats. If you're an immigrant, you're listening to the show right now, and you vote Republican, they don't like you. They're not happy you're here, right? Then we see this. I mean, Melania Trump is objectively the most stunningly beautiful, multilingual, and I think maybe the first immigrant first lady in history. And all the media do is spit in her general direction. It's appalling. It is appalling. But there's even more about this that people said. It's just, oh my God. This is Trump derangement syndrome it's like if you're trying to distill it down to its essence, here you go. The first lady changed the rose garden, and people are calling her a foreigner who has no right to be here or do anything having to do with the White House. And another guy referred to it as a fascist parade ground. I forget. That was another, lib reporter. Unbelievable, the stuff that you see here. Unbelievable. But I guess I got to not say that because it's all entirely believable in a sense. These people are appalling morons. Appalling morons. And they have no introspection. They have no sense of decency or sense of fairness in how they report on things. And they absolutely hate this first lady. They absolutely hate her. Speaking of things that are absurd and appalling, here's some of the trailer for the Comey rule, because now the libs, just in time for the election on Showtime, the channel, are going to try to turn James Comey into a hero again. Here's some of that trailer. Play 15.
So we are now 15 days before a presidential election, and we have to go through 347,000 emails to determine if one of the candidates in that election needs to be indicted.
Russia. We think they're trying to sabotage Secretary Clinton's campaign.
How?
Never spend much time on Facebook.
Hours to go before the polls begin to close.
Wisconsin, you see the lead? This is a sweep. Dr. Comey.
The networks have all called it for Trump.
No one has ever succeeded like I have.
This was not espionage. This was an attack.
This was not espionage. This was an attack. An attack on our democracy. It's Facebook ads that say things like, lock her up about Hillary and MAGA. This is an attack on our democracy. Liberals have no perspective anymore. There's no ability to have a normal conversation about anything. They're completely insane. All right. It was not an attack on our democracy. It was, oh my gosh, Russia, Facebook ads. I hate to break the news to people, but America's been getting involved in other people's elections for a very long time. I know this also might be a little bit of a shock to some folks, but I'm not saying it means that we should allow it here, but we're also, oh my gosh, now the outrage over all of it. It's so interesting, isn't it? Friends, James Comey is slime, but he's useful to the left right now, so they're going to try to pull this whole thing off where they make him look like a hero. That's the exciting part of being a lib. They make the HBO movie and they lie about how awesome you are, or the Showtime movie.
It's time for roll call.
It is roll call time, everybody. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton or teambuck@iheartmedia.com. That's the best way to get. Or Instagram, Buck Sexton. Send a direct message there. Good idea to put roll call at the beginning of it so I don't have to wonder if I'm going to open an Instagram message and someone's going to say, blankety blank, you're blanking blank, I blanking hate you. So, of course, now some of the crazy libs will hear this and say, aha, I just put roll call, and then he'll look at the message. The moment if I see a 4-letter word in the first, 3 words of a message preview on Instagram or any of our social accounts, I delete it. I don't read it. I'm not like, oh, yeah, right, Producer Mark, it's probably a good idea.
I mean, your name is a 4-letter word, so.
You know what I mean, smartass.
So are both roll and call.
Good point. Fair. True. But I mean a dirty word. Profanity. We don't like any of that profanity stuff. How was Producer Mark's weekend?
Fine. Uneventful, really. I went grocery shopping. That's like my big outing every other week.
I feel like every time I go grocery shopping, there's one thing that I'm excited to buy, and there's a lot of things like, eggs and butter that I'm like, I got to buy this, and milk. What was the one thing you were excited to buy?
Oh, always ice cream.
What'd you go with?
Chocolate ice cream.
Just chocolate straight up?
Well, there's this grocery store we go to called Stu Leonard's, which has really a soft serve, so they package it up. and put it in containers. Yeah.
Can't go wrong with the. I was thinking maybe you're going to say some funky hippie thing, and I was going to make fun of you for like getting Ben and Jerry's, Chunky Monkey or something like that.
Don't hate on Ben and Jerry's; they're delicious.
Whatever, it's commie ice cream, but chocolate, you can't mess with chocolate. It's delicious. All right, we'll get to the roll call. We've got Staz. Is that right?
Maybe Stas.
Stas? Okay. Hey, Buck, greetings from Wowo Land, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Shameless pandering, but love the show. Producer Mark is great. Well, thank you. Perhaps I missed it, but I didn't hear anything about the wrong Trump hashtag trending on Twitter when Robert Trump passed away. Libs were openly saying they wished it was the president who died. As disgusting as it was, I'm not surprised. Just surprised I didn't hear much from any conservatives pointing it out. Keep up the good work and shields high. Yeah, look, I know that there were people that when the president's brother died, they were celebrating on social media because they're ghoulish imbeciles with no honor, decency, or real worth as individuals. So that's, I'll tell you this: there's never any of that here, and that's one thing that we always adhere to. And I will say, I think conservative media in the news media landscape is generally far more. The audience holds us to a standard of decency that the left, because the libs are insane, they don't have. I mean, these people really are deranged. There's something wrong with them. They forget about their common humanity. They forget about what really matters. I saw this with Kellyanne Conway now saying that she's stepping down from the White House at the end of this month, and also George Conway, her husband, whose behavior has been disgusting. I mean, it really has been horrific. When your wife works for the president, and for you to be attacking the president on social media so publicly, you don't. George Conway's not anyone whose opinion anyone really cares about. And anyway, and the daughter, people were trying to convince the daughter, she's 15 years old, she's a minor, she should be no part of any of this, bringing her into it, and it just became this sort of spectator sport to ruin the Conways and turn them against each other and all this stuff. So they're both now, the parents are stepping away and focusing on the family. I've got to say, it's a good move. Now, I mean, I'm not a part of any of this, and I don't even know them, but it sounds like maybe it would have been a good move a while ago, but it's certainly moving them in the right direction, and that I think is a reminder for all of us that there are more important things than politics. There are more important things than likes and follows on social media, more important things even than having a lot of power and making a lot of money. These are all true statements. I grew up here in New York City, and I was never a rich person, but I was around a lot of and was close to some very, very rich people. And I can tell you this right now, there are very influential, very wealthy people who are truly, utterly miserable human beings. Like, wake up in the morning and hate their lives. I know it sounds trite. I know you're like, come on, man. I would just fly around in my private jet, and it would be like a beer commercial, and this is for the guys out there, obviously. All the ladies would be in bikinis everywhere, and it'd be amazing. No, you still got to wake up in the morning, think about who you are. You still have your personal relationships. You still have your own insecurities and and if you didn't make the money, that can be even more of a challenge psychologically for people, because now you get to live this very rarefied existence and never really know who you are or what you're worth. I don't mean worth financially. I mean worth as a person. So yeah, I'm not surprised about any of the nasty stuff said about Trump's brother when he died, because libs are ferocious savages. But that's what's going on. Wade, don't these defund police nuts realize that without the police presence, so many would have been eliminated by the citizens? The police are protecting them. I mean, Wade, you would think that anybody with a brain would recognize that getting rid of cops would mean more people die, more violence, more misery, more despair in the streets. You would think that would be the case. But, I don't know. Libs are a little crazy. And they clearly think that right now it's more important politically to pander and to pretend that, that's not that important. To pretend that cops are not that necessary for our society. It's stupid beyond words, but it is true. It is reality. So, I mean, I would hope that they would recognize that, but unfortunately they do not. Michael writes, Present, sir. Not wanting to be prejudiced by talk radio or news, I decided to give Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt and watch his entire speech, and it didn't end up a good recipe for me. The end really grabbed me, and I wondered if he was coach. Sound serious, Joe. Give them your serious face, the serious Joe face. Or he was talking while thinking, I should be here and have to do this. I should have been president of the I shouldn't be here and have to do this. I should have been the president of the United States already. After the acceptance speech, the thought of Joe being president scared the hell out of me. Yeah, I think that Joe Biden is a super weak candidate. It's not just a super weak candidate. This guy shouldn't be president. Forget about, is he not a strong candidate? The guy shouldn't be president. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. He represents an ideology that will be harmful, and he doesn't have the personal characteristics necessary to hold back the crazier elements of his own party. So I think it's a complete disaster if this actually happens. David, hey, Buck, love the barbecue talk. I never understand why North Carolina gets accolades for their vinegar-based barbecue. What is more important is the dry rub applied, pairing of smoke wood to the meat, and temperature and duration of the smoke. People use barbecue sauces to cover up their shortcuts. You should only need a slaw and a preferred pepper sauce for the real deal. Just saying. David, I had a great time with the folks of North Carolina when I was down there, and it was worth it, even though I've had to be in quarantine now for 2 weeks, because New York doesn't allow you to visit North Carolina without being in quarantine. I had a great time down there, and I've just got to say, I had some very good food and wonderful people. North Carolina barbecue. I went to a place called King's, which it was very highly regarded, I was told. I think it's a chain, but it was supposed to be very, very good. And I remember just eating this. I was like, I'm supposed to just pour some vinegar on my pulled pork? That's it? Really? Really? I don't know. Maybe some of you in North Carolina, you could explain to me how that is going to stack up against, my Heart 8 experience in Dallas, or my, Pecan Lodge experience in Dallas, or I can't remember the name of the place. It was right next to the Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, but it was a barbecue joint right there that was fantastic, like a block away from the Music Hall of Fame in downtown Nashville. I don't understand how this stuff. Producer Mark, you ever had North Carolina barbecue?
I haven't, and it doesn't sound good. I'm sure the meat is good, but I would want some barbecue sauce.
It was
That's
fun,
the best part.
and there's a lot of like breaded fried stuff. And, that tastes good, but there's too much stuff that's just breaded and fried. North Carolina has great farm-to-table produce. There's so much more there. I don't know, man. Look, I probably needed to go to some hippie town, or like a college town, or city like Durham, and I'm sure they've got great restaurants and stuff there. I was out in a more rural area, but I look, North Carolina, I love you, but your barbecue did not blow my socks off. I just got to be honest about it. And I know now I'm taking sides in the great barbecue wars of America, but I'm just going to say it. I've had Brooklyn barbecue. Yes, Brooklyn COMEY barbecue. That was better than my North Carolina barbecue. Texas, whole other league. Texas barbecue is like the food of the gods. Tennessee barbecue, absolutely love it. North Carolina, I don't know. David. Oh, wait, we already did David. Evan. I love your analysis of how if Trump was really a fascist, he could have really easily justified an enormous power grab considering all this lockdown madness. I don't think most people can define fascism, though. I always think of it as someone holding a gun to your head saying, do what I say, as a simple kind of definition, but I don't think most people could even define the word as simply as that. What do we do in the face of the willfully ignorant mob? Evan, this is always a good question. I get this so much doing radio and doing the things that I do. How do we win, or how do we convince them to stop being so dumb? And I feel like the answers are always so insufficient. How do you win an argument with a willfully ignorant mob? I think you just dig in and fight, and you do what you can, knowing that you may not win. That some of the most important battles are the ones that you won't win. Now, this obviously goes against my don't charge the machine gun unless you have a plan to take it. But I mean, that's when you're taking a risk, right? Losing a debate is not the kind of, that's a different thing than putting yourself in a position to just suffer consequences without any real hope of succeeding. So, Evan, I don't have a ready and easy answer for you other than the ignorant mob is ascendant in this country. It is not entirely a product of the left, but it is dominated by the left. And it's very troubling. And I wish I could say that at a time when we have more access to free information, instantaneous. I mean, right now, you sitting with your phone or with your computer in front of you, if you have internet access, you have access to more combined knowledge of the world and everything in it than all of the great scholars of the 19th century, let's just say. All of them put together. All of them versus your access. You now have more access to information than all the smartest people of the 19th century in America. And yet we have morons running everywhere. I don't know. I wish I could tell you that there was a better answer than that, but that's where we are. Roy. Hey, Buck, I'm a retired fire lieutenant. I worked at the City of Miami Fire Department for 32 years. I've spent about 98% of my career riding the ACLS paramedics unit. On one of my minor calls, I had a group of Australian citizens in my truck. I asked them if Australians really drink Fosters. Their answer was an emphatic no, not 1 second of hesitation. Love your podcast, Shields High. Roy, thanks for keeping people safe and putting out the fires. And yeah, man, Australians, I have some Australian friends. They hate it when we do our bad versions of their accents. They hate it. So even I try to stay off that one because it's a very specific accent and they don't like it. Although I will say Aussies as a group of people have one of the most affable attitudes of any group of people on planet Earth. I mean, they really are Aussies just have a great attitude about things. I mean, I know that's a big generalization, but they're friendly, they're laid back, they're cool. I don't know. Aussies are a great people. It's like all the upside of British people without any of the snobbery. That's what I'd say. And a little bit more of a beach vibe and culture. That's what Aussies are like to me. And as for Fosters, I can't drink beer anymore, but, I know that even the guy who does the Australian for beer, that guy's not even Australian. That guy's probably name is like, Tony Di Napoli or something, and he lives north of Producer Mark in Bergen County or something. Right, Producer Mark?
Almost certainly.
Almost certainly. All right, more roll call. Tim, what's happening, Buck? In addition to your reverse sear technique, next time you cook steak, plan a few days ahead and dry age your steaks. Wrap your individual steaks in a paper towel and place on a wire rack on the bottom shelf of the fridge. Replace the paper towel daily and age for 4 days. Heavily seasoned with nothing more than kosher salt, it's as good and far cheaper than aged steaks from a fine steakhouse. Keep rocking it, man. Shields high. Well, let me just say, Tim, I didn't even know that we were going to come to this in roll call, but producer Nick told me that he went reverse sear over the weekend for his steaks, and now he realizes game changer. It's like, do you want perfect steaks? Now, I know whenever I talk about my reverse sear, which I've done now countless times, I'll even do a version of a reverse sear if I have a really thick burger. You can reverse sear that too, because a really thick burger, it's very tough to cook that properly on a stovetop. I'm talking about one of those 2-inch thick burger patties. You're going to get it raw in the middle or you're going to overcook the outside. So the reverse sear is very effective for that too. But people always tell me, oh, what about sous vide? And I'm like, guys, I'm not putting my steak in I know it might work really well, but my reverse sear works. I'm not wrapping up the steak like a science experiment in plastic and dropping it in water and having I don't know. I haven't done it, so I'm knocking it without trying it. But everyone always sends me do the sous vide. I'm like, that sous vide is a fancy French word for complicated, darn it. That's what I say. Reverse sear, that's the way to go. We should come up with a cooler name for reverse sear, like caveman cook or something. I don't know, something that sounds a little more raw. But anyway, Tim, I'm so glad that you shared this with me about how to do a sort of a at-home hack for doing a dry age at home. That's a cool way to do it. I mean, dry age steaks, I love it. And I was at a place over the weekend, and they had an American Wagyu style steak I wanted to get, but it was like $45 a pound. Real Wagyu is way more. It's like $16 or $20, maybe even $30, I think. But $20 an ounce, I think, is pretty standard, or maybe it's $16 an ounce. Real Wagyu is more expensive than having a really high-end drug habit sometimes. But I just went with burgers instead. You know, I don't know. I cook a really good burger. You throw a little bit of an aioli on it. It's a fancy word for mayo with a little bit of olive oil thrown in. It's fantastic. I'm a big fan. I'm getting hungry now. Got to close out the show for today. Go check us out at bucksexton.com. Shields high.